Inside South Africa's CMAX, the prison built for the most dangerous. Before we begin, if stories like this grip you, haunt you, or make you question what really happens behind the world's toughest prison walls, then drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy true crime stories like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. Because the deeper we go, the darker it gets. The night the alarms screamed across Pretoria, the city felt it. A deep, metallic howl rolling through the cold air, the kind of sound that makes neighbors open windows and police radios crackle to life. It was just after 2 a.m. when the call came through. Possible homicide connected to CMAX inmate. Unconfirmed escape attempt. Officers respond immediately. When Detective Ruben Masiko arrived at the crime scene, all he saw was blue police light bouncing off a deserted service road. A single prison transport van sat jackknifed at the edge of a drainage ditch. Its rear doors were open. The cage inside had been cut from the inside out, a clean, surgical slice. But the inmate the team expected to find was gone. Instead, a prison guard sat trembling on the pavement, still cuffed with his own restraints. No blood, no signs of a struggle, no footprints in the dirt, no witnesses. Just a single detail everyone kept noticing, over and over again. The guard wouldn't speak. Not a word. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, as if he'd seen something so frightening that silence was safer. The missing inmate's name was Tobias Khumalo, a former gang strategist turned state witness. CMAX had classified him as extreme risk, not because of brutality or chaos, but because he was a man who thought 5 steps ahead of everyone else. His mind was a weapon, the kind that could start wars inside prison walls without lifting a finger. He was scheduled for a confidential transfer that night. Only 5 people knew about it. Yet someone not only knew, they were waiting. Detective Masiko walked around the van slowly, studying the ground like it might whisper secrets. There were no tire tracks, except those of the transport. No broken branches. No drag marks. Almost as if the inmate had vanished into thin air. But Masiko didn't believe in vanishing. Not in the real world. Someone planned this. As dawn crept over Pretoria, a new layer of tension settled over the city. Rumors spread through CMAX's concrete corridors like wildfire. Khumalo was out. Some inmates celebrated quietly. Others looked terrified. Because no one knew if he was escaping or hunting. By midday, the investigation widened. CCTV along the route was wiped clean. The data servers at CMAX had experienced a power glitch an hour before the transfer. 3 guards scheduled for the escort called in sick. And a 4th guard, the one found at the scene, wasn't even assigned to that shift. Something bigger was moving beneath the surface. Later that evening, while reviewing the prison's visitor logs, Detective Masiko found an anomaly. A falsified clearance entry under the name of an international human rights inspector. Someone had access to Tobias Khumalo 1 hour before the transfer. Someone who shouldn't exist. He rushed to the records office, hoping to cross-check the identity. But when the clerk pulled the file, the folder was empty. Every page, every signature, every document, gone. As Masiko stared at the blank folder, a chill ran up his spine. Someone with high-level access was inside this system. Someone powerful enough to erase their own trail before anyone knew to look. Still, nothing prepared him for what happened next. At 10:47 p.m., as the detective prepared his report, a uniformed officer ran toward him, breathless, holding a sealed evidence bag. Inside it was a single object recovered from beneath the prison's ventilation shafts. A cracked, government-issued tracking anklet. The one Tobias Khumalo was wearing during the transfer. But the real shock wasn't the device. It was what was carved into its plastic frame, a set of coordinates. Coordinates that led back toward CMAX, not away from it. Tobias wasn't running from the prison. He was heading back to it. And whatever he was returning for had only just begun. The lockdown nobody saw coming. The next morning, CMAX woke under a sky the color of cold steel, heavy, unmoving, like the universe itself was holding its breath. At 6 a.m., The warden initiated a level for internal lockdown, something so rare that even veteran officers whispered about it like a myth. Every door slammed. Every corridor froze. Every inmate was confined to their cell until further notice. Detective Masiko stood in the control room, surrounded by blinking monitors and the uneasy hum of generators. Warden Elias Rottenbach, a broad, rigid man with a voice like crushed gravel, kept pacing behind him. Tobias Kumalo isn't just missing, Rottenbach muttered. He's moving with intent. This lockdown isn't to keep him out, it's to stop whatever he's planning. Masiko didn't disagree. The coordinates carved into the anklet still rattled in his mind. Why would a man escape from the country's highest security facility, only to aim himself right back at it? The detective zoomed in on the prison's perimeter cams. The deep blue morning fog made everything look distant, blurred, like CMAX was sinking into a silent ocean. But even through the haze, something stood out. A small, temporary maintenance door at the west wall hung slightly open. Barely noticeable, unless you were looking for it. "What's that?" Masiko asked. Rottenbach stiffened. "That shouldn't be open. That access point is only used during structural inspections. It's padlocked from the inside." A padlock meant nothing to a man like Tobias Kumalo. The warden dispatched 2 officers. Minutes later, they reported finding the lock cleanly removed. Not broken, not forced removed. A professional job. Too clean for an inmate on foot. Now it was certain. Tobias wasn't alone. Masiko shifted focus to the guard who'd been found cuffed beside the escape van. Officer Delene Grobler. She still hadn't spoken a word since the incident. In the medical wing, she sat upright, staring at a pale blue wall, fingers trembling in rhythmic taps against the blanket. The detective entered the room quietly. "Officer Grobler," he said gently, "we need your help. No one is here to blame you. But you saw something. Something you're afraid to say." For a long moment, she stared through him like he wasn't standing there at all. Then, suddenly, her eyes flicked toward the doorway, like she feared someone would walk in. "They weren't supposed to be there," she whispered finally, voice barely audible. "There were 2 of them." Masiko stepped closer. 2. She nodded. One was Tobias. The other, he wasn't an inmate. He didn't wear a uniform either. He knew the codes. He knew the procedures. "He told me not to speak." "What did he look like?" the detective asked. Her breathing tightened. "He wore blue. Dark blue. Like he belonged. But his badge..." She stopped, shaking her head hard. "No badge. No name tag. Just a lanyard with a black card." A black card meant one thing: top-level clearance. External contractors, internal intelligence, or special operations visitors. People with access far above ordinary officers. "Did they say anything to you?" Masiko pressed. "Yes," she whispered, shutting her eyes as tears built. "He said, 'This is bigger than the prison. Keep quiet if you want to live.'" Before Masiko could ask anything more, the facility PA system erupted with a harsh alarm. "Attention all units. Unauthorized breach detected inside Administrative Block C. All personnel respond." The detective sprinted out of the medical wing. Officers were running in every direction. Somewhere deep inside Block C, where sensitive files, internal investigations, and high-clearance records were stored, cameras had gone offline one by one. And then he saw it. On a hallway monitor, a single frame had frozen before the feed cut out completely. A dark blue silhouette moving past the archive room. Head lowered. Face hidden. The same profile Officer Grobler had described. Tobias Kumalo wasn't breaking into CMAX to free someone. He wasn't starting a riot. He wasn't seeking revenge. He was after information. But what information was so important that he risked returning to South Africa's most secure prison? That question burned in Masiko's mind until an officer rushed toward him with a radio in hand. "Detective, the archive room door is open. And, sir, you need to see what's inside." Masiko pushed through the crowd, heart pounding. Inside the room, the lights flickered. Cabinets were open. Files pulled out. But one drawer was completely empty, cleared with surgical precision. The label above it seemed to glow in the dim light. Internal Corruption Unit, Classified Cases. Tobias wasn't escaping. He was exposing something. And the truth was going to tear CMAX apart. The blueprint of betrayal. Detective Masiko stood inside the ransacked archive room, the cold fluorescent lights flickering above him like a dying heartbeat. The silence felt wrong, too thick, too heavy, too calculated. The empty drawer labeled Internal Corruption Unit, Classified Cases stared back at him like an open wound. Whoever Tobias, Kumalo had returned with they hadn't come for revenge. They had come for truth. And that truth was dangerous enough to risk breaking into CMAX. Behind Masiko, the warden's boots thundered against the concrete floor. Detective Rottenbach growled, "If Tobias is involved in this, he's digging into something he shouldn't. That drawer was sealed years ago. None of my officers even know those files existed." Masiko turned sharply. Then how did Tobias know? The warden didn't answer. Not immediately. His jaw tightened, the muscles shifting like fault lines beneath his skin. Masiko recognized that look, the look of a man calculating what he could afford to say. Before he could press further, the radio on an officer's belt erupted. Emergency in section red. Inmate movement detected in prohibited corridor. Suspected intruder spotted heading toward the ventilation junction. The corridor mentioned was no ordinary hallway. It was the artery that connected admin, supervision, and inmate control, the nervous system of the entire prison. Tobias wasn't just moving. He was following a plan. Masiko sprinted through the cold, blue-lit hallways, the building vibrating with alarms. Officers formed barricades, radios crackling, boots slamming, keys jangling. CMAX had become a maze of panic. But the detective noticed something others didn't. Tobias and his partner weren't moving randomly. They weren't running. Their steps were calculated, purposeful. They were heading toward a single destination, the sublevel security hub where deep storage files and old recordings were kept. Footage that never saw daylight. The moment Masiko reached the junction, he saw a maintenance hatch hanging open. Fresh scuff marks ran along the metal floor. Someone had passed through moments earlier. He dropped to one knee, inspecting them. 2 sets of prints. The larger ones were Tobias. The smaller ones almost certainly the man in the dark blue clothing. The detective followed the trail into the ventilation conduit. The air was cold, metallic, smelling faintly of dust and old wiring. Blue emergency lights pulsed along the walls like a heartbeat guiding them deeper underground. Halfway down the corridor, he found something lying on the floor. A black lanyard with a clip, identical to what Officer Grobler described. But the card was missing. Somebody had taken it. He pocketed the lanyard and continued. At the end of a corridor, the passage opened into the door of the sublevel hub. 2 officers were already there, staring at the metal door in disbelief. The electronic keypad was fried, melted from the inside. "Thermite," one officer whispered. "No," Masiko muttered. "This is military-grade plasma burn." The partner in dark blue wasn't just a contractor. He had training. When they pushed the door open, the room inside was dark except for a single blue security light in the ceiling, casting long, eerie shadows across the floor. Shelves were overturned. Server racks were dismantled. Dozens of cables hung like torn veins. And on the central desk, glowing faintly in the dimness, was a tablet. Still warm. Recently used. Masiko picked it up. The last access file displayed on the cracked screen made his blood run ice cold. Operation Gavel. Suppressed footage / external agent involvement. Date, 6 years ago. Status, sealed by Warden Elias Rottenbach. Rottenbach froze behind him, breath caught in his throat. Masiko turned slowly. "Warden, what is Operation Gavel?" Rottenbach didn't answer. His face drained of color. His eyes drifted toward the far corner of the room. Masiko's instincts flared. He raised his flashlight. And there, lying on the ground, illuminated by a soft blue shimmer, was something that shouldn't exist. Something that should have been destroyed long ago. A steel briefcase. Government issued. Marked with a faded emblem. South African State Security Agency. Tobias hadn't returned to break the prison. He had returned to break open a secret the government had buried inside it. And whoever the man in dark blue was, he wasn't helping Tobias. He was using him. The man in dark blue. The steel briefcase sat in the center of the cold floor, glowing faintly beneath the blue security light, as if the metal itself remembered every secret it was built to carry. Detective Masiko stared at the embossed state security agency emblem, a ghost from the past that had no business being inside CMAX. Behind him, Warden Rottenbach had gone unnaturally quiet. Too quiet. Masiko lifted the briefcase onto the desk. It was heavy, secured with an old biometric lock that hummed faintly with low power. He pressed the screen with a gloved finger. The device blinked red. "Warden," Masiko said, not looking back. "Why is an SSA case hidden inside your sublevel?" Rottenbach didn't answer. Instead, he stepped backward, almost instinctively, as though distance might make the truth less dangerous. The detective finally turned. "Tell me." Rottenbach released a slow, shaking breath. "Because CMAX wasn't just built for dangerous inmates," he whispered. "It was built to hide the state's mistakes." Before Masiko could demand more, the radio on an officer's belt exploded with static. "We've got movement in cell block Echo." Tobias Kumalo spotted heading toward the upper transfer wing. "The second suspect is with him." Repeat, 2 intruders moving as a team. But Masiko's stomach dropped. Something wasn't right. Tobias was a planner, a thinker. He never panicked, never ran blindly. So why would he suddenly move toward the transfer wing, a dead end surrounded by choke points and armed patrols? Unless... "He's not running," Masiko murmured. "He's being directed." The man in dark blue wasn't a partner. He wasn't helping Tobias uncover the truth. He was manipulating him. The detective bolted out of the sublevel, sprinting into the blue-lit corridor. The prison's alarms wailed through the concrete walls, a rising metallic howl that vibrated in the bones. Officers ran in organized formations, locking down doors, securing wings, shouting orders. But Masiko wasn't running with them. He was chasing an unseen architect, a man using CMAX like chess pieces. A shadow moving through the cracks. The detective reached the stairs to the transfer wing. As he climbed, he saw fresh scuff marks of a struggle on the railings, one larger set from Tobias, and another precise, lighter set. The man in dark blue moved like a ghost. Clean, efficient, professional. Masiko emerged onto the steel walkway overlooking the transfer wing. And there, illuminated by a long shaft of cold blue light, he saw Tobias. The inmate stood breathing hard, wrists scraped, eyes darting like a cornered animal. The man in dark blue stood a few meters behind him, posture calm, hands empty, expression unreadable. "Tobias!" Masiko shouted. Tobias's head snapped up. Relief flooded his face. "Detective. He lied to me. He said he knew how to clear my name. He said." The man in dark blue raised a hand, silencing him. His voice was smooth, steady, controlled. "Detective Masiko, stand down. You're interfering with a classified operation." Masiko felt the chill move through him. "State security agency?" The man didn't blink. "I am here under mandate." "But Tobias isn't your asset," Masiko shot back. "No," the man said, stepping slightly forward. "He is my leverage." In that moment, the truth hit like a blow. This wasn't about prison corruption. This wasn't about Tobias's old case. This wasn't even about CMAX. It was about Operation Gavel, a covert government project hidden away 6 years ago. And the man in dark blue wasn't here to expose it. He was here to erase what was left. Tobias trembled as the realization set in. "He used me," Tobias whispered. "He used me to find the files." Masiko stepped forward slowly, trying to keep the situation from exploding. "Let him go." For the first time, the man in dark blue smiled. A thin, controlled curve of the mouth. "I can't do that, detective. Tobias has seen things no one outside the agency is supposed to see." The blue lights flickered. A siren pulsed. Then the man added, voice colder than steel, "And I can't let either of you leave this wing alive." The final gate. The air in the transfer wing tightened, as if the entire prison was holding its breath. The blue overhead lights flickered, washing the steel walkway in pulses of ice-colored shadows. Tobias stood frozen between Detective Masiko and the man in dark blue, a living witness trapped in the crosshairs of a covert war he never asked to be part of. The man in dark blue stepped closer, slow and deliberate, like someone accustomed to controlling every variable in a room. His gloved fingers brushed the side of his coat, as though reminding himself that he still had time, power, and authority on his side. "Detective," he said calmly, "step back. Final warning." Masiko didn't move. "This prison is under police jurisdiction. You don't get to make people disappear here." The man's voice dropped to a chilling whisper. C-Max was designed for exactly that. Tobias flinched. "You said you'd clear me. You promised you'd help." "I promised access," the man cut in, eyes never leaving Masiko. "I never promised survival." It was then that Masiko saw it, the faintest tremor in Tobias's hands, the widening of his eyes, the twitch of his jaw. The inmate wasn't just scared. He had remembered something. "Tobias," Masiko said quietly, "what did he show you?" Tobias swallowed hard. His voice came thin and trembling. "Files, photos, names. Judges. Officers. People who worked with the gangs. People the government wanted gone. Operation Gavel. A buried intelligence project designed to eliminate high-level corruption, and then bury its own tracks even deeper." Masiko felt the weight of the truth settle over him like concrete. The man in dark blue wasn't just protecting secrets. He was the last keeper of a dying operation. And Tobias wasn't leverage anymore. He was loose ends. A sudden metallic click echoed through the wing, a gate locking automatically behind them. Then another. One by one, the doors sealed, turning the transfer wing into a silent steel tomb. The man in dark blue looked around without surprise. Containment protocol activated. Good. Less to clean up. Masiko stepped forward. "You don't need to do this." But the man merely tilted his head. "Detective, this is the part where you understand you never had control." He lifted one hand and tapped the side of the walkway railing. The gesture was small, almost casual. A soft beeping answered him. The walkway beneath their feet shuddered, hydraulics releasing. Masiko lunged, grabbing Tobias just as the steel platform snapped loose. The man in dark blue stepped back with ghost-like precision, standing on the only section still locked in place. "Tobias, hold on." Masiko yelled, gripping the inmate's arm as the platform tilted dangerously. Below them, the concrete floor waited like a pit. The man in dark blue spoke over the groaning metal. "Let him fall, detective. You don't know what he stole. You don't know what he knows." Tobias's voice cracked in panic. "I didn't steal anything. I just saw. "You saw too much," the man said. Masiko pulled with every ounce of strength. "You're not killing him." "On the contrary," the man replied. "Gravity is." But the man made one miscalculation. Tobias was terrified, but he wasn't helpless. With a burst of sheer desperation, Tobias swung his free arm and slammed it into the stabilizer bar behind Masiko. The blow jammed the mechanism, freezing the collapsing platform just enough for Masiko to haul him onto a stable section of walkway. Masiko spun just in time to see the man in dark blue retreating toward the emergency exit. Calm. Controlled. Erasing himself from the scene. "Stop," Masiko shouted. The man turned briefly, his silhouette outlined by the sharp blue glow behind him. "Detective, the real story isn't in this prison. It's in the case. And if you open it, you won't survive long enough to tell anyone." Then he vanished through the exit door as alarms erupted across the entire block. Officers rushed in seconds later, securing Tobias and pulling Masiko to safety. But by then, the man in dark blue was already gone, dissolved into the machinery of a system built on secrets. Hours later, as dawn broke over C-Max, Masiko stood outside holding the cold steel briefcase. Tobias was safe. The prison was secure. But the warning echoed in his mind. The real story isn't in this prison. It's in the case. He opened the briefcase. Inside were classified folders, surveillance images, and a list of names, not of criminals, but of officials, high-ranking ones. And on top of the files lay a single handwritten note. If you're reading this, you're already inside Operation Gavel. The sun rose over CMAX, casting long blue shadows across the razor wire. Another secret uncovered. Another war beginning. If you thought this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it.